Hi everyone and welcome to my guide for the Season 26 theme, the Echoing Nightmare. If you are not familiar with this at all yet, it is essentially this little survival arena with waves of monsters spawning. As you can see here, it's a little bit reminding of the old trial system, but there's also lots of other stuff going on with elites and bosses, and there's pylons in every corner. So there is a little bit more action compared to what we know from the earlier seasons. So the objective here is that you reach at least 125, which gives you the highest rank of this new Whisper of Atonement legendary gem, which is an augment only gem that you can acquire after every single one of these runs. And you can go even higher than that, up to wave 150, which gives you more experience rewards and also slightly more loot and blood shards and these kind of things. It is similar to clearing a GR 150. So the experience reward is extremely good, especially if you manage to get to wave 150 consistently and quickly. And there is one build in particular that stands out for doing this quite easily, which is the one you're seeing right now, the Marauder Demon Hunter. It is definitely by far the best build for this game mode because of this screen clear AoE and rather high damage compared to most other builds in the game. And it really works like a charm in this game mode. If you have a well-optimized character and you know what you're doing, then you can probably do one of these runs in roughly 2 minutes or so, potentially even slightly faster depending on the arena. And I calculated that in optimal scenarios, you could reach something like 8 to 10 trillion XP per hour, which is probably way better than what we're gonna see for most speed GR metas in Season 26. To open one of these Echoing Nightmares, you need a Petrified Scream, which is the key that drops from Greater Rift Guardians, so you cannot get this before level 70. And we also don't know the drop rate yet, because on the PTR it was 100%, but in the final patch notes they mentioned that that was changed, but we don't know how much. The crazy thing about these Petrified Screams is that you only need one for the entire party to enter, so similar to puzzle rings, for example, you can share them with other people, and you definitely want to do this with other demon hunters most likely, or maybe a support demon hunter mixed in, or a support barbarian, so that you just multiply the value of your keys by chaining those Petrified Screams. So make sure you stack those up and then you group up with other people that also have keys. When you enter, you'll see the objectives here on the right that will show you this overwhelmed bar and also the current tier. The current tier is roughly equivalent of GR tier, so you know that everything below 100 or so is essentially one shot. And then as you go beyond that, it becomes a bit harder, but you also have the helpful pylons, namely a speed pylon, a power, a channeling, and a conduit pylon. And clicking those pylons in the right moment will make it fairly easy to reach all the way to wave 150. Even on builds that are not necessarily a Marauder Demon Hunter, which is like the build for this game mode. What this means is that in the end, the waves that you can clear in Echoing Nightmare are vastly inflated compared to Greater Rift tiers that you can do with the same character. So if you can clear, let's say, a GR 120 or so in a push with your character, you will most likely be able to actually complete wave 150 in this game mode because of this power boost from the pylons and because there's some other little tricks that help you get a little bit further. As for the mechanics of the Echoing Nightmare, you can see this overwhelmed bar, and essentially what this shows is the amount of monsters that are in the arena. And this fills up the more monsters there are, and if you defeat them, it will go empty again. And if it reaches full, the entire thing stops. So this is the way to end an Echoing Nightmare. You cannot TP out, and there's not really any safe spot or anything like this. And I know this is a pretty huge concern for hardcore players, but it is actually fairly safe to just run around in circles and you just wait until the encounter ends. It doesn't take very long to fill up this overwhelmed bar. It's maybe something like 10 to 15 seconds of not killing any enemies to go from 0 to 100%. So you don't have that much time, and as monsters become more and more tanky, you will simply not kill them very quickly anymore, and inevitably you will fail and this overwhelmed bar will fill up. But if you want to end it on purpose, it is fairly easy to do so because it actually fills very fast, and in other circumstances actually in a matter of seconds. What you can see me doing here is actually a no pylon run, so I haven't clicked any pylon at all, no shield, no power, no conduit, And I was still able to clear wave 130 plus, wave 135 plus on even like a rather squishy setup that I was doing here. So this was not optimized for this scenario at all. This was mostly some, yeah, just kind of what if test runs that I've been doing here on the PTR, because I was low-key expecting a nerf to the Pylons in some way. In any case, as I mentioned, you don't actually need a super powerful build to beat this, but Marauder Demon Hunter is simply the prime candidate because it is powerful, and most importantly, it has this screen-wide AoE, and you can do this in multiple directions with your sentries. There are other builds that have similar AoE clearing potential, even stuff like, for example, Fist of the Heavens Crusader, which is a terribly weak build compared to Marauder Demon Hunter, but it's still one of the best in this game mode, simply because you blast down the first waves so fast. And as you can see here, you can actually skip a lot of waves at once. If you look at the counter here, we go from 64 to 67, and we go again to 70, and here we actually just skipped 12 waves. And this is the maximum you can skip. So the faster you kill enemies, and essentially when you just delete them off the screen in milliseconds, you will skip 12 waves. And if you take like a little bit longer, let's say around 1 second or so, you skip 8 waves, I believe. And then it goes down to 3 or 2 and then 1. So if you just barely, slowly kill enemies, you will not skip waves. But if you have a build like this, you can skip a lot of waves at once and speed up the encounter. On other builds that have to set up their damage or don't really have this AoE, let's say you're playing like a Jade Witch Doctor, you simply are too slow in actually defeating those early waves. And instead of reaching wave 100 in like 50 seconds, it will take you like 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes. Even though you won't really have much trouble, most likely, still clearing it towards the higher waves anyway. So this is one of the main considerations for choosing a build. It's your ability to especially clear the early waves really fast, because you don't want to spend minutes and minutes chasing down those little guys in every single corner. Speaking of corners, there's one really important thing you have to be aware of, which are those hellish machinations that you can see here in the top right corner. So these are those little, like, I don't know, swirly machines that Stonesinger spawns, and they spit out the fallen lunatics, those little fallen dudes that run at you and suicide and explode. So you want to make sure you catch those as fast as possible, because they will spawn endless waves of these fallen lunatics, which most importantly will not allow you to skip waves, but also will fill up your overwhelm bar really quickly. So you always have to keep an eye on your minimap here, and you see every single monster has a skull icon, so you know where monsters are. And you can also see these things spawning in the corner. And if you see an immobile skull somewhere in the corner, you know that this is one of these machinations, and you have to go there and you have to blast it down. And on the higher waves, they can become quite tanky, but luckily we have the Pylons, especially a Conduit Pylon, I think actually one-shots these things. So in the high waves, it's not such a big deal. But somewhere in those like 100 to 120 or so, before you click a Conduit, it might become a little bit of a trouble to actually defeat these things. So always keep an eye on your minimap, especially also in the earlier waves when you're trying to skip really fast. This can slow you down a lot, and you want to make sure that you get these things as soon as possible. On the other hand, one other nice little thing that you can find in these nightmares is also bandage shrines. So you can see here on the minimap you have this little shrine icon, and those can also randomly appear as a wave. And you have not very much time, you have like a few seconds or so to go there and click them, but you can get massive amounts of loot, similar to like a bandit shrine when you're doing T16 bounties or so. It is definitely worth trying to click it and defeating those goblins. Again, if they spawn on the higher waves, let's say 125, 130 plus or so, it can be quite tough to nuke down those goblins in the heat of this battle, but it can be very easy when you still have the Conduit running. So depending on the timing, you can get lots of extra loot there as well. Now, I have talked a lot about Pylons, but how do you actually use them? So this is from the PTR, and here there was still a Sheer Pylon, which is replaced with Speed now, which does make it a lot harder to survive, especially in the higher waves. After wave 100, you will see these meteors falling from the sky, and you have these molten explosions everywhere and all the stuff going on. And most importantly, also don't completely one-shot all the enemies anymore. So stuff just becomes a lot more dangerous, but typically, especially with the Speed Pylon, you will be able to just, walk around wherever you want. You can dodge really quickly, and you just need to sidestep like a few steps, and you will be out of meteors, damage, and stuff like this. So I don't really expect it will be too hard as long as you stay mobile and you move around and you click the other pylons in the right moment. So this was a test run here that I was doing with only a conduit pylon and none of the other pylons. And you see here I clicked it at wave 134. And if you click the other 3 pylons before this and finish off with the conduit, you will go way above wave 150, as you can see here. So the conduit pylon alone will carry you something like roughly 20 to 25 waves alone. And before this, you have the other pylons to carry you for also like 10 to 20 waves, depending on the build, depending on how much you profit from the speed and the channeling and the power altogether. The conduit pylon in this mode is actually extremely strong. It is way better than in Greater Rift, and it zaps down even elites in a matter of like a few seconds. You cannot actually kill Rift Guardians with the conduit, so this is unchanged from Greater Rifts, but the damage is insane of these conduit pylons, as you can see here. Remember, I clicked it at wave 134 and now we are at 154, 20 waves higher, and I still have like 15 seconds of conduit left. So if you have like a really big conduit, you can get even close to 30 waves from it. So the best way to do this is that you just blast down the early easy waves on your own. Let's say that you go to like wave 80, wave 100 or so in, very little time. Let's say half a minute up to 1 minute or so with a build like this. And then you can actually start clicking those pylons already, because with a flavor of time on your follower, you're going to have double duration, you're going to have 2 minutes speed and 1 minute of the other pylons. And this also aligns really well where you can click the speed together with the power and potentially a channeling if you profit a lot from the channeling. Let's say you're on like a cooldown based build like Corpse Explosion, or even just for resources on a Marauder DH, it can be quite nice. So you do a combo of speed plus power plus maybe channeling, or you use the channeling defensively later together with the Condi, so that after 1 minute, when speed is halfway gone and the power has just run out, you click the conduit pylon and this will just carry you the remaining waves to victory. And the thing is that if you're actually aiming for really fast runs, let's say 2 minutes, you can basically click those pylons almost right away, or maybe 30 seconds after you started. So this is definitely like the high-end goal that, you just do like the first 80 waves or so in like 30 seconds. Then you click speed plus power, and a little bit later you're gonna click the channel plus Condi, and you can just, use this channeling pylon to stay alive, press your smoke screen, press your serenity, press your mobility, your teleport, whatever you have on your class. And like this, you will be able to just dodge around, run around, and the conduit will carry you. And how crazy those pylon combos can get, you can see in this run. So this was like a push where I tried to go as high as possible. I think I ended at like almost 180 or something like this. And I just watched my overwhelmed bar very closely, and I saw that I was slowly getting overwhelmed. And as I approached like 50% overwhelmed or so, I decided, okay, it's time. And we did the shield and the power combo. So on the live patch, this would be speed plus power combo. And in the case of a Marauder Hunter, probably also the channeling, so that I can keep shooting as long as I want. And you see here, it gave me like roughly another 10 tiers from doing those 2 pylons. If I had clicked the channeling pylon, it would have been a bit better. And now we also click the conduit to just finish off everything. And I also have this channeling pylon now, so I can vault around freely. I don't have to worry about my discipline. And it is way easier to survive suddenly. Going above wave 150 doesn't actually have any effect or any extra rewards, so you're just wasting your time, and you want to end the encounter, best case scenario, with the conduit pylon running out exactly at like wave 145 or so, and then you just run a circle around the arena with the remaining speed pylon you have until you get overwhelmed exactly at wave 150. So this is how you want to do it. And this also makes it quite safe for hardcore players, I believe, because you will have the speed pylon, not a shield, but you will be able to move around freely at a really high pace. You'll be able to dodge things very easily. And if you combine the pylons well with first the power, where you kill stuff really quickly, and then the conduit that kills everything around you really quickly, you will be fine, because most of the time there will not be many enemies on the screen anyway. On softcore, the plan B would also just be to immediately die exactly at wave 150, so you can proc cheat death before already on purpose, and then you can just get yourself killed immediately once you reach 150, and you don't have to try to like time this overwhelmed so that it's perfectly hitting at wave 150. But obviously this is not an option for hardcore players, and in general I also really dislike dying, so that I would probably just try to time it. So it comes down a little bit to practicing it, but after a few runs you'll probably figure it out, just how much you're gonna kill with your counter pylon. It also comes down a little bit to the arena. I believe there are in total 6 different arenas. So there's like 3 of them that are very open, and then there's like some like this here that has a bit of walls, and sometimes you have to like go to another side of the arena to defeat those machinations, and you have to like just in general jump around a little bit to pull everything. So yeah, these kind of closed like walled maps are a little bit harder to deal with, and usually it's a little bit harder to push to the highest waves. So these open maps are generally a bit better, but it doesn't really impact it too much. And that's also pretty much it for what you need to know about the Echoing Nightmare. We're gonna have like a full mechanics explanation post up on Maxwell very soon, and you can also go read up on like all the juicy info there. And potentially there might be some adjustments depending on what happened on the final live patch, because this video was recorded before the season started and there were some final tweaks, so maybe there's going to be some follow-up update from my side as well. At this point I also want to quickly highlight the build that you have been seeing here in the background all the time. I have been tweaking it slightly since then, because with the speed pylon, most importantly, you don't need vault anymore, so you can go smokescreen, which will also help you tremendously to survive those molten explosions, those elites coming at you, and you're just gonna be spamming smokescreen, and it's almost like a shield pylon again. And even if you're not planning to main a Demon Hunter next season, I would strongly encourage you to make a Marauder Demon Hunter specifically for this game mode, even if it's a really scuffed version with really bad gear, because of how good and how smooth it is for this game mode. But obviously on Maxwell as well, we're gonna have Echoing Nightmare setup for every single build. So if you go to our guides here, you just scroll down a little bit beyond the core setup, and here's going to be the season 26 section with an Echoing Nightmare setup that you can find on all the build guides. So this will have the links to the other Echoing Nightmare guides, to the meta post, the tier list. We'll have the planner here. We also quickly describe a few changes that we made from like a regular pushing build or so, if you're familiar with the build. Here's also a few pointers about the gameplay with the pylons and how to do this. As I had mentioned earlier, you can be quite successful in this game mode because the bar is actually set very low because of this insane boost you get from the pylons. I'm planning to make an updated full build guide for the Marauder Demon Hunter, but I want to briefly explain this for you guys for the Echoing Nightmare specifically. So you want to collect the full set, the Crimson, and then you can go Focus on Restraint and Squirts, or you can go Endless Walk and Convention. Both is fine, I would say. And you play the Fire Multi-Shot version. So you want to have the good yanks, you have this Bombardier's Rucksack, and then you have all the important multipliers to make this work here. And the way to play this is that you put your sentries all over the place in different corners. So you can see me here spreading them out. There's up to 5 sentries. So especially in the early waves, you're going to be one-shotting everything. You want to make sure that you cover the entire AoE for the plus 12 wave skip. And then towards the later waves, when enemies actually have a bit more HP, you might want to stack up those sentries a little bit. Maybe 2 together in one corner and 3 in another, or something like that, so that you can deal a bit more damage. And then once you click all the pylons, you can spread them out again, because it's going to be annihilating with a power pylon. So this is basically how that works. And as you have placed the sentries, you're going to start shooting multi-shot. You're going to press the Vengeance on cooldown. You're going to press the Companion on cooldown. And you refill your resources with your generator in between. So luckily, it is fairly simple to play this build in this game mode. And then, as I had mentioned, you're going to have Smokescreen on your bar instead of Vault. And you can just use that to protect your Squirt's necklace. And later on, with the Channeling Pylon combined, you will have a quite easy time staying alive, even when shit hits the fan and you have to dodge meteors and moltens and all the elites at the same time, because it's going to be invincible almost the entire time anyway. And this also concludes the guide. So to summarize, you get Petrified Scream, the key, from Greater Rift Guardians, and you want to share them with other people because you only need 1 per party. And you want to reach at least wave 125 to get this Augment gem, but better, you get up to wave 150 for insane XP rewards. And the way to do this is with proper pylon timing. So you try to AoE down everything as fast as possible in the early waves. Make sure you defeat the hellish machinations that spawn in the corners and spawn these little fallen lunatics that come and rush at you. And then once you know that you're gonna complete the encounter in the next 2 minutes or so, usually around wave 100 or so, you're gonna click the speed pylon, you're gonna click the power pylon, and as the power pylon runs out a minute later, you're gonna click the cornered pylon. And channeling, that depends a little bit whether you want to profit from the channeling during the power or during the cornered for defense. And like this, you can get to from 100 to like 140 or so very easily. And then it's just a matter of running around in circles until you get overwhelmed and the encounter ends. And that's it. So wish you good luck in Season 26. Hope you liked that video. For more Season 26 guides, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.